Breaking points. Happy Wednesday. Emily, how you doing?
Doing great. How about you?
Very good. We've got a packed show today. We're going to talk to Lieutenant Colonel, retired, Anthony Aguilar. Later today, he's in Washington, D.C. He's actually going to be disrupting a Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Don't tell anybody, but check that out. That'll be at 10 a.m.
Right.
That's kind of our secret.
We got him before. He's
Right.
going to head to Capitol Hill.
By the time this airs, it will have already happened.
Right, but he has some really important perspective to share ahead of that about recent updates. And
Yes,
it's
the enforced disappearances that Israel's accused of effectuating through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and also his recent conversations with the ICC. He also told me that the USAID and the State Department internal investigators have reached out to him. So, you know, while he is while he's speaking publicly, he's also speaking directly to whatever authorities will listen about the crimes that he witnessed.
the scrappy remnant of USAID.
Apparently, there's still some people with like Wi-Fi access at USAID, and they're probing this.
Interesting. We're also going to start today with some clips. I feel like, actually, I was thinking about this earlier, Ryan. The amount of times that we have opened up a show by saying the president had a truly wild press conference yesterday has to be in the dozens at
And
this
not
point.
wild anymore. It's just called a Trump press conference at this point.
Right. Although it's absolutely accurate that he did have a truly, by other standards, bananas press conference yesterday where he was confronted with video evidence that he had died. Responded to that, so you're not going to want to miss this block. Also, as usual, he also addressed some very important questions, whether it's what's happening in Ukraine or what's happening here at home. So we're going to break.
We're launching a war in the Caribbean against fishing boats.
Yeah, well, yes, we are. We will discuss all of that, and we have video of the strike that the government is putting out. So we'll get into that. Also, we will have updates on whether or not companies are going to get tariff refunds from the United States government, which is an actual question on the table right now. So markets reacting a little bit to some of Trump's comments yesterday about those tariffs and what might be coming. So we have a lot to get into with that. Major Jeffrey Epstein victim press conference happening on Capitol Hill today. There was a big document dump just yesterday. We have some details on how legitimate or compelling any of that evidence is and what you can expect to see here in Washington today as Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie assemble this press conference of victims to get that discharge petition, which is right now hanging in the balance as to whether they'll get enough Republicans. They need 6. Whether they'll get enough Republicans to sign that discharge petition and compel the release of additional documents.
Yeah. And then we're going to take a look at the unrest in Southeast Asia. Malaysia, the Philippines, and Indonesia all seeing significant protest. Each one of them has their own unique characteristics, but all of them kind of related to corruption and people just fed up at the way that their governments and their elites are ripping them off.
And we'll also be joined by Pam Bailey, right, Ryan?
Yeah, I think is that an extra or is that going to be part of the show?
It's in the F block here.
So Pam Bailey and others put together a book called We Are Not Numbers, which is a collection of essays and poems, pieces of literature by Palestinians about their experience, not just in the last 2 years, but also leading up to it as well. And that book rolled out this week.
All right. Well, looking forward to hearing from Pam Bailey. Let's dive into our A block, which is this winding press conference that Donald Trump conducted yesterday, where he made this announcement that Space Force Command Center was being moved from Colorado to Huntsville, Alabama, and had a collection of senators, cabinet members assembled behind him. And of course, took many, many questions from the press, including some questions on whether or not he was actually alive. If you missed the fevered speculation over Labor Day weekend, then you probably weren't on TikTok or X or Instagram because, Ryan, it was absolutely everywhere. There seemed to be a genuine contingent of, I guess you could say, Blue Anon that was pretty convinced there was something odd going on with the president. There's always something odd going on. But that's what I was just going to say. In fact, there have been obvious signs that Donald Trump is aging. He had the bruises on his hands. He had the swollen ankles. In July, the White House mentioned that he had been diagnosed with a benign condition that caused the swelling of the ankles. And then for Donald Trump to not have public events scheduled for 3 days is always strange, even if it's the slowest week of the entire year in Washington, D.C., which is Labor Day week. But granted, that is what it was. And Trump appears to be very much alive, as he confirmed for everyone in front of the cameras yesterday. Ryan, let's put A1. Let's roll A1 here.
How did you find out over the weekend that you were dead? You see that?
No, it's sort of crazy. But last week I did numerous news conferences, all successful. They went very well, like this is going very well. And then I didn't do any for 2 days, and they said there must be something wrong with him. Biden wouldn't do them for months. You wouldn't see him. And nobody ever said there was ever anything wrong with him. And we know he wasn't in the greatest of shape. I did numerous shows and also did a number of truths, long truths, and I think pretty poignant truths. No, I was very active over the weekend.
There is a video that is circulating online now of the White House where a window is open to the residence upstairs and somebody is throwing a big bag out the window. Have you seen this?
No, that's probably AI generated.
So
Actually, you can't open the windows. You know why? They're all heavily armored and bulletproof.
So that's a fake video?
Well, it's got to be, because I know every window up there. Number one, they're sealed. And number two, each window weighs about 600 pounds. You have to be pretty strong to open them up. No, that has to be. Where was the window? Let me see. Which is the window?
It looks like this is on the 15th Street side, I think. Yeah. So right here.
Yeah, those windows are sealed. Those windows they're all sealed. You can't open them. But also they create things, you know. It works both ways. If something happens that's really bad, maybe I'll have to just blame AI.
Okay, so if you're joining us as a podcast listener, what you missed was Peter Doocy of Fox News, with whom that exchange was happening between the president and Doocy, walked up to the presidential podium at Trump's request with his phone and showed Donald Trump the video, and Trump sort of looked over like your grandparent at Thanksgiving who you're showing a very funny meme to, and said, it's AI. If anything goes wrong, blame AI. Ryan.
Let's add that as in post as VO, so people can see, if they haven't seen it, the
video itself.
The White House has already commented on it and said, it's not AI. Trump is confused on this.
He might be, because they are renovating the Lincoln bedroom. This was part of the reason the conspiracy theories should have been halted by at least Friday, is that he did this long interview with the Daily Caller, and the reporter there, Reagan Reese, who posted pictures with him, said she talked to him for an hour, and in the transcript, you can hear him. He gets up at one point and shows her the renovations of the Rose Garden, and then says, we should get her up to see the Lincoln bedroom at some point, which is why he's just so, he's talking there about the windows, and he says, I know every window up there. Of course he knows every window up there, because he seems to be extremely focused on the details of every renovation that's happening at the White House. And we've seen since some comments from sources and media reports that suggest this is actually Donald Trump, something he sees as his legacy is the Trumpian renovations to the White House. So I thought the trash thing was legitimately weird, and understand, why people spiraled and went down the rabbit holes given his bruising and everything else. But it was obviously pretty, by Friday, I think it was obviously a little bit over the edge.
Well, he's alive. He's alive, and
he's posting the most poignant truths. And
he's playing very poignant truths. Yeah. Well, he thought they were poignant anyway. I'm sure they were poignant.
Poignant.
Yes. I love that he thinks his truths are poignant. That's amazing. He also announced that he's going into Chicago. Yeah. So he's going to do that. We've got, we can roll that next stop.
Lined up on Chicago, though?
Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. Chicago is a hellhole right now. Baltimore is a hellhole right now. Parts of Los Angeles are terrible. If we didn't put out the fires, and I mean the other fires, the bullet fires, they didn't do a good job with, they should have had the water coming down, like I said. We had to release the water. We had to go in and release the water to L.A. It's so badly run.
Everyone March today in California ruled that your deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles was illegal. Do you have any response?
Well, it was a radical left judge. But very importantly, what did you not tell me in that question or statement that you made pretty much of a statement, I think.
Well, I was asking for your response.
No, you didn't say what the judge said, though. The judge said, but you can leave the 300 people that you already have in place. They can continue to be in place. That's all we need. But why didn't you put that as part of your statement?
So he said he's going into Chicago, but doesn't know when. So presumably it's going to happen. We don't know when. Mm-hmm. What can we make of the latest legal setback?
Yeah, it's a good question because obviously what's happening in D.C. is different than any other city. So whether it's Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, completely different across the board from D.C. And in L.A., the justification is that the National Guard was guarding federal property and federal agents. So ICE agents and then also federal buildings. And that is what the Trump administration now, they can declare emergencies of various kinds. That's something that was discussed in 2020 and actually had been used before, if I'm remembering correctly, Ryan, right in the 1960s that the National Guard had been brought in. And that was what the now infamous Tom Cotton at the New York Times was talking about, is that there's some historic precedent for doing that. But of course, those are active riots that were then trumped up to the legal standard of insurrection in order to justify it.
And they also brought the military in a bunch to break up strikes in the 19th century.
Oh, that's such an interesting point. Yes, and so there are all kinds of ways that you can stretch, and that's what was happening in Los Angeles. And it means that the administration has to think about how that would work in a place like Chicago. Are they just deploying around federal buildings? Are they just going to be following ICE agents? This is a difficult, or is there going to be some type of legal, like to your point, justification that there's an ongoing emergency? Obviously that would be part of it, but is there something that's going to say that the crime, what are they going to use? They have different devices, so it probably means that they have to look at another tool in the toolkit legally.
Right, so they have to fight crime only around federal buildings. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker responded, thank you, but no thank you. Here's Pritzker's response.
I'm aware that the President of the United States likes to go on television and beg me to call and ask him for troops. I find this extraordinarily strange, as Chicago does not want troops on our streets. I also have experience asking the President for assistance, just to have the rug pulled out from underneath me when execution meets reality. I refuse to play a reality game show with Donald Trump again. All those events required significant coordination between all levels of government. Some, like the Democratic National Convention last year, even required a limited deployment of the Illinois National Guard for broad security purposes, including especially preventing terrorism.
So Illinois lawmakers might not want it, but Morning Joe lawmakers do. Let's roll A3.
I actually think that J.B. Pritzker should do something radical. I think he should pick up the phone, call the president, and say, you know and I know you don't have the constitutional authority to deploy the National Guard here and to police my. You can do that in D.C., you can't do that in Chicago. But let's partner up. These are the most dangerous parts of my state. We would love to figure out how to have a partnership that's constitutional, that respects the sort of balance of federalism between the federal government and the state government. And let's work together to save lives.
Was he proposing like a clear and hold strategy in Chicago?
I mean, first of all, the stilted melodramatic delivery of Joe Scarborough when he says, I'm going to propose something radical, and takes like a 10-second pause. But Brian, let me say something radical. I know it's not radical at all. It's actually like conventional, probably wisdom of people like Joe Scarborough, although in this case, I'm not convinced it's entirely wrong. The Chiron on that Morning Joe segment was 54 people shot, at least 7 killed in Chicago. I think there probably is a middle ground. It's not to say that Donald Trump would be eager to compromise with J.B. Pritzker, but I think J.B. Pritzker's political instincts here are way off, unless what he's doing is just to position himself for a 2028 primary, in which case that's great because you're building up goodwill with the sort of activist base of the Democratic Party who absolutely wants resistance at all costs. On the other hand, people of Illinois see Chicago as being in like this rolling state of emergency for decades, and I think not incorrectly so. And this is, there has to be a way for people like J.B. Pritzker to say, I'm taking this seriously, and the people of Chicago who are desperate for protection and some order in different parts of the city that desperately need it, I'm not going to look like I'm blocking all of that. I'm not going to look like because that's what Trump is doing. Trump is positioning them. He's like boxing them in so that they look like they're against taking this more seriously. And that's not exactly what's happening, but on the politics of it, people in Illinois are going to want to see like Chicago be in some state of order. They might not love Donald Trump, but then you're forcing them to choose between something they don't like from Donald Trump and something they don't like from J.B. Pritzker. And a lot of people are going to side with Trump in the Trump-Pritzker. If Pritzker looks like he's against taking crime in Chicago more seriously, and Trump looks like he's for taking crime in Chicago more seriously.
Well, the reason I disagree with that is that I don't think there's anybody who's persuadable who thinks that Trump sending the National Guard into Chicago is actually going to do anything about crime, even necessarily short term. Like, if you send a whole bunch of National Guardsmen into a block, I think while those guardsmen are on that block, you might have less crime. Mm-hmm. You cannot occupy every single block.
And you can't do it indefinitely either.
It's not
or should you?
It's not a short-term solution for the whole city. It's not a medium or long-term solution, period. And so what it is just a photo op and cool optics for the MAGA guys who want ASMR videos of boots stomping through Chicago.
I don't disagree with that, but I think for a lot of people, I mean, there were here in D.C. When local news was going around and asking people about the federal takeover, there were people in like Ward 7, Ward 8 saying, I'd love to see the National, I don't love Donald Trump, but I'd love to see the National Guard actually come to this neighborhood because we haven't seen them yet. So I don't necessarily agree that, maybe that's where we disagree on this. Whether or not it's successful, I think there's an appetite for whether it's a National Guard or some like heightened enforcement among like average people. That's a different question of whether or not it'll actually be successful. And that's one of the big problems here in D.C. that I'm already seeing is you have the National Guard out, and then across the street, I mean, I just saw this weekend, you have people who are suffering from like addiction tweakouts on the street. They're not doing it. Like, that's not what they're there to do. And so, yes, it's obviously a very Band-Aid type solution. And probably the longer it goes on, Ryan, the less persuasive that is to the average person. Maybe it actually works against Donald Trump if he deploys the National Guard in Chicago in some way, because it becomes sort of D.C. with the federal city status is different than Chicago, Los Angeles. It becomes more obvious that it's not actually a long-term solution.
Right. If he even tried to present a solution like, I'm going to send these national federal officials, whether it's Guard or ICE or whoever it is, into the city, and here's how they're going to actually make the situation better.
Right.
Then I think he might at least get a hearing from a decent number of people. But he's not even trying that. He's just like, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to send in the Guard.
Right.
And I don't think anybody takes that seriously.
Well, so this was the decision that Trump was referring to there was from actually Stephen Breyer's brother out in California, who said that deploying to LA earlier in the summer violated posse comitatus. So Trump then has to say, on the one hand, the National Guard is restoring order and that he is not violating posse comitatus. And those two things are really difficult legally to say are both true at the same time, unless you can find, like we were talking about earlier, the quote loophole of, I mean, it's not really a loophole, it's just the Insurrection Act exists. There are ways that you can do it. But Breyer's ruling bars the Pentagon from, quote, ordering, instructing, training, or using the National Guard currently deployed in California or any military troops heretofore deployed in California from, quote, engaging in arrests, apprehensions, searches, seizures, security patrols, traffic control, crowd control, riot control, evidence collection, interrogation, or acting as informants. unless they have permission from Congress, according to Politico. So obviously that's narrow. The language is narrow to California, but looking to Chicago, the administration is not going to be afraid to test that ruling and see if they can get something like this up to the Supreme Court, probably.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.